Good. Right, good morning once again. You got me as the main presenter. I'll get the panelists up a little later. I just would like to take you through a couple of slides just to provide context to what we are doing, and then I'll get the panelists up and we'll open the floor to questions if you have any questions in terms of what we're doing. So, thanks once again for attendance. What we're going to be looking at from the Arcelor Mittal perspective is self-sustainability. That's quite important for us, that we get self-sustainability, and we'll show you why in a moment. And it's all about our pipeline. So we have a number of pipelines, and one of them that we're focusing on today is our engineering pipeline. We are an engineering company, so obviously we focus a lot on engineering training and development of our leaders, but a lot of our energy goes into our engineering development. Now, as you can imagine, if we look at the market and you're only dependent on the market to bring in engineers, you might be wanting. And therefore, it's very important that we develop our own. So once again, as Laura has indicated, you'll see the hashtag. Please use it, please tweet, and let's make this event great. So let's start the ball rolling and say, what is the issue around engineering and science-related degrees? The very first thing you will note, and this is information straight out of the US, but it's a global phenomenon, and that is that top graph is the important one, the red one that's dropping down. That's your engineering degrees. And if you look at that, it's down. What's that, 24%? Now, that data is a little old. As you can see, it's stopping at 2001. But what happened as a result of that is the IEEE, which is the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers, got very alarmed and went on a global drive to push up science-related degrees. So the only great thing about that was that the degrees that women were doing started to increase, because engineering has always been a male-dominated sort of thing. And unfortunately, although it's picking up, we still don't have the representation, the gender representation that we want. So this, via the IEEE, started a program called TISP, the Teacher in Service Program. So we went into schools and we trained the teachers, and we gave the teachers the required information, tools, tips, etc., to actually speak to their kids at school to make the link between science, engineering, and mathematics at school. Because that is the problem. Teachers are great at teaching the learners at school to solve for X. But ask that same maths teacher, what do you do with X? And it's a blank. They have no clue. They can teach you about a linear graph or a logarithmic graph, but they have no clue of the application. And sometimes it takes quite a while. I think I was my 5th year at varsity before I realized that I can actually now take these formulas and apply them and do something. Wow, okay. It takes a while. And that we should do a lot earlier. So this is what the IEEE has been up to over the last number of years as a result of that graph. But as a result of that graph, you can understand we've got a problem in terms of the engineering pipeline. So an updated graph. You'll note now that the engineering figures have picked up. Okay, we've gone up a bit now from the previous years up to 97,000. This is US data which we can get quite easily. But compare that to the other disciplines and fields of study, and you'll note that engineering is way, way down there. All right? As they say, engineering is not sexy. Okay, it's difficult to attract people into the engineering sphere. It is. Because what do we see on television? Doctors and lawyers. Remember my comment earlier of the doctors and the lawyers. You don't see programs on engineering and engineers. Many years ago, we had the MacGyver thing, which has come back now. But still, what people look at is what they aspire to. So the UK has got a big problem. They enroll 500 people a year for forensic science studies. Why? Because there's a television program that they watch, right? Forensic science. But there's only jobs for 50. So what does it help? So you've got to have that supply model matched to your demand model, which we don't have in South Africa either. In South Africa, it's absolutely a supply model. All right, we need to train so many people. But what are we training them for? Are we training them for unemployment? So we do need to first have a look at what is the demand model before we go to the supply model. This is a busy slide, so don't worry if you can't read it. I'll just highlight a couple of facts on here. It's really about how do we as a nation drive the challenges of education and the critical skill shortages that we do have. And everyone talks about the skills shortage, like the artisans. Wow, there's such a shortage of artisans. We need to train 50,000 before the year 2020 or whatever. But there isn't any jobs for them. And a lot of our graduates, diplomats, etc., leave South Africa and go to one of our other provinces in Australia. All right. And they usually end up in Perth or one of those places. So it is problematic. But having a look at that, if you look at the key insights, in South Africa, a lot of companies stopped training post-1994. They heard of this learnership thing and they didn't know what it was about, and it took so many years to come on board that a lot of skills were lost, specifically in your artisan sphere at that time. Our educational system is under-preparing our kids from school to go into the university sector. I don't know if any of you specifically were affected, but a number of years ago, we changed the education system and took away higher grade maths. And then we had maths and maths literacy. And the actual higher grade maths that you need for university was an additional Maths 3 paper that you had to do after school on Saturdays. And I mean, as a kid at school, you really want to go to school on a Saturday. So how effective is that? Those poor kids got to their very first university lecture, and the prof, he went off there and started to talk about things they've never, ever heard of. And that was problematic. So what's happened now? A 4-year engineering degree in South Africa has become a standard 5-year degree. It's just become 5 years. They've taken your first year of varsity and made it 2 years long. So some people will be lucky enough, they would have done the maths and they'll slot into the 4-year program. Otherwise, they're in a 5-year program. Failing number of graduates in the engineering and science-related fields, we've looked at that in that first slide. So yes, there's a lot less of them going through, but also throughput at universities is actually pretty, I don't know what's the word, it's pretty bad. Actually wanted to say it's pretty pathetic, but 15 to 18% throughput rate at varsity. That's not good. That's actually very bad. There's a global demand for our engineering skills. Yes, we leave for the other provinces. And the nice thing is our diverse graduates are starting to pick up. So gender representation is becoming better. At universities, it's at least on par with Europe. And if you look at our African colleagues, really picking up well. And that's great to see. So nationally, we have the educational problem. We need to assist the education department. And I said to you, we do that. And why do we do that? It's, I guess, a bit selfish in one aspect, because we do want decent marks coming into the pipeline so that we can develop people. We don't want people with maths of 35%. We can't send them to university to become an engineer. So we've created a lot of science centers in all of our different provinces, and we actually bus the school kids from school into those science centers, and we give them math, science, English, communication, because we found out that the English subject literacy is lacking. They can speak English, but the moment you give them the paper to write, they don't actually understand what they have to do. So it's subject literacy in terms of English. This is not a program where it's after hours. They don't do their maths and their science and things like that at school anymore. They do it in our science centers with what we call edutainers, not educators. So we make it fun for them. They don't see a school which is drab. They walk into a classroom that's got a green wall and an orange wall and a blue carpet, and it's all multicolored. And what that actually does eventually is you'll see day one, they come there, eat their salmi, throw down the wrapper. Other kids say, no, you don't do that here. And suddenly they start to look after. When they go back to school for the other subjects, they don't throw things on the floor anymore. So it starts to rub off. So it's a great thing that's happening there. So that's where we're starting with our programs, already in grade 10. Okay? Obviously, we attend our career expos and we do things like this, which we're doing today, because it's great and it's good to get your brand out there, but it's also great to learn from everybody else. And I believe you can learn from anybody at any stage. It doesn't matter who you are. All right, obviously we help with a lot of the curriculum developments in terms of our new qualifications, and we're very active in the university sector in terms of advisory committees, informing the university what should they now remove from the curriculum, what is actually history rather than engineering, because it doesn't exist anymore. And that's where we still have a problem in our college sector, in our TVET college sector is, I always say that their engineering curriculum is actually history, because it's curriculated in 1950. So they're actually teaching our youngsters about things that do not exist. Okay. They actually don't exist anymore. And you can always have the argument, yeah, but it's good to know these things. It is. But there's certain things you don't want to teach a person and then still go and assess them on it if it's obsolete. In fact, it's not even manufactured anymore. Right, so let's then move over. Having a look at the top graph, you'll notice that is our apprentice program in South Africa and how it's dropped from 1982 right down to almost nothing. And then Arcelor Mittal, together through the GIPSA process, which was the Joint Initiative for Priority Skills Acquisition, the Technical Skills Business Partnership, which was the six-pack, we called them the six-pack. It was the 6 big companies in South Africa, Arcelor Mittal, Sasol's, the Transnets, Amplats, Escoms, etc. We got together and said, no, guys, we have to train over and above our own need in the artisan sphere, otherwise we're never going to get this right. And then you can see how it started to climb from that point onwards. So that was a great initiative that was done. What you're looking at there is really only the MERSETA, so that's the Manufacturing, Engineering and Related Sectoral Education and Training Authorities information. It's not the entire South Africa, but it's the largest SETA. Looking at the graph below, that's where you can see, look at that purple graph. It's picking up very nicely. So our African colleagues are going to university, are graduating in the engineering sphere, which is magic. You'll notice the other race groups is pretty much what it was. It's just flat line, which is expected. And that's great, because that tells you that there is now people and availability of skills coming out of the universities that can be tapped into. So what we do is we look at a workforce plan. So that's number one thing, is look at your workforce plan. And I'm actually very surprised. I worked with a lot of companies in South Africa and on a lot of national forums. And there's not a lot of companies doing a workforce plan. They actually look at me as, are you mad? What is that? So we do a workforce plan far ahead. At least the minimum period we do is 6 years ahead. Because if I need to recruit somebody from school, grade 12, with the right math, science, and English communication skills, put them through a 4-year degree program, which on average in South Africa takes 6.1 years to achieve, all right? 6.1 years to get a 4-year degree, as the throughput indicates, plus give them a 2-year candidate phase, sort of a 2-year program where we put them through the motions and mentor and coach them. It takes you 6 years. And then all other programs are less than that, so your technicians and your production learners, etc., goes down. So first of all, you need to do a workforce plan, and that's actually critical. Right, having a look at that, here's typically information out of the workforce plan. So you can see in some of those spider diagrams, we're looking at the most in need, or sort of, let's call them the most in need disciplines within our engineering fraternity. So just looking at engineer, you'll see most in demand is in our metallurgical engineers are there, and our metallurgical very much so. mechanical, and electrical. So we're a metallurgy company, actually, metallurgical company, so it's obvious. I've got the information there for our technicians as well as our artisans. So it's quite important to look at that, do your pipelining work, look at your turnovers, and very important, that workforce plan. And then looking at that analysis, which comes out of your workforce plan, and we spoke earlier about one of the things that millennials will need, one of those 7 skills, and that is analysis. You need to analyze the data. So it's very easy to look at people and say, okay, great, so what? But analyze it, what does it mean? Now, in all of those graphs, as a company, we're looking quite okay. And that's because we've had a strategic workforce plan forever. We've always driven skills. So our pipeline, it varies and it changes every year, but we're hovering right now about 1,300 people in our development pipeline. That is from your artisan right up through to your engineers. It goes up and down between 1,300 and 3,000, depending on the needs. But the one where we are lacking is the middle one at the bottom. And that's our engineers. You'll see we've got a lot of young engineers with little experience, and we've almost got no experienced engineers. Okay, when I say almost no, I mean it's not really none, but it's little in comparison. So that is not the kind of graph you want to see. You want more or less a flat line in terms of age group. A lot of young ones, but also a lot of middle-aged ones, a lot of experienced ones, so that you can transfer skills. Because some events, specifically in our industry, we run blast furnaces and things like that, something might only come along every 20 years, every 10 years. So a young person, as you can see there, we've got a lot of youngsters, and there's some of them sitting in the audience today, they might not have experienced certain actions. So although it's great that they're there, and we really do need them, and we need to nurture them and get them through, we want them to stay there so that that line becomes flat and doesn't go down like that. Okay, so that's also linked to we see the need, and just relying on the market is not good enough. Okay, that second philosophy is let's drive the pipeline. Let's create a pipeline, and let's make sure that the people in our pipeline are developed. So we have a pipelining concept, which means it doesn't matter where you are in the organization. If you leave the organization, we bump the successor up, the successor up, the successor up, and we take a grad in at the bottom. Okay? That's not the only way of doing it. Obviously, there is certain strategic resourcing done along the way, but predominantly, we drive the pipeline. Oops, okay, so what is the pipeline? That is how it looks in terms of what we do. So we have engineering bursaries that we offer. That's to send people to university. We have technician bursaries, exactly the same, but for technicians. Then we have our candidate engineers and technicians. These are the ones that have completed their university studies and they come into the company for a 2-year internship or an 18-month internship for technicians. We have the learner technician program. So we take people from the universities of technology. We give them their work integrated learning, their P1 and their P2. We have an apprenticeship program, and post that we put them into what we call a candidate artisan program, which is unique to us as a company. That's a 1-year internship for artisans. We have a production learner intake and a graduate in training. Those grads are people that have studied, finished on their own, non-engineering related. So that's our kind of pipeline. That constitutes the 1,300 people that we're constantly developing. So, where does it go wrong? The very first point is recruitment. We want to recruit, and there's a big cross through that. The next thing you want to do is you want to, after recruitment, you provide the bursary, you send them off to university. There's a big cross through that one as well. After that, you'll see on the right-hand side, they come in, and there's like a line, and there's a line that says bursar employee. So before that, they're a bursar. After that, they become an employee. And I'm only focusing on our engineering pipeline now. They become a candidate engineer for 2 years in the company, fully fledged employee under guidance and mentorship. And then they go into a full-blown engineer position. Let's look at the crosses. What's wrong with our recruitment processes? Maths and science. English communication, that's the problem. The underpreparedness of our basic education system to address higher education. And this happened when we only had one education system. Now we have two, basic education and higher education. So the communication between these two departments has become a problem. And that is why we institutionalized the science centers that I spoke about earlier, so that we can address the maths and we can address the science, the English, computers, as well as career guidance. Because guess what? That's also disappeared from our schools. Nobody knows what anything is out in, so doctors, lawyers, the programs we watch on TV. Okay. So we drive that science center quite a lot. We have in excess of, well, it's, I think 1,600 kids that we're actually busing around all the time and training all the time from a Monday to a Friday. Then recruitment, obviously we recruit nationally, and part of that recruitment process comes out of our science centers. So the science center kids that are going to get this edutainment for the last 3 years of their schooling career, basic education, actually will then enter our pipelines. They can become the engineers of tomorrow, the technicians, etc. So we've improved on that. And then we prepare them. So once we've recruited them, and they might have come out of the science centers, or we've recruited them nationally, we orientate them to the life of academia. Because that jump, as you will all know, from grade 12 school to academia is quite something. We make sure that our engineering burses, and no offense to anybody here, do not reside in a res where there's marketing people. All right, because our perception that from an engineering perspective is marketers just party and have lunches and have a great time. I know it's not really like that. But we got to get them into a res where they can focus. All right, so there's a couple of universities that actually have good reses for that and actually give specific marks and make sure that academics counts, and it's not just the social. So it's that. We then take our burses and we do some brain mapping with them. So we actually analyze their brains, not with a scanner, but we look at them, are they left brain, right brain, front brain, back brain, top, bottom, which eye is their dominant eye, what do they see with and what do they hear with, left or right. This makes a total difference. Because if you then understand how your brain works, you'll know what is the best learning method for yourself. Because currently, at school, we don't know how to learn. You go to school, the clever ones are only the ones that can take it in. They don't even learn that much. The average person which does better at university than the clever ones works at school, after school, keeps on working and does well. But we don't necessarily build a learning style for ourselves that can work. So we look at the different learning styles, we map it to the brain patterns, and we put it all together. So as an engineer, probably left-brained, I am. Most people are then hear with their left ear. I don't, I hear with my right ear. So what does it tell you about me? I listen to the message, but I hear the emotion in the message more than the message. A left-eared person will hear the message and not the emotion. So often it's asked of me, but you studied electrical engineering, what are you doing in HR? It's my right ear. Okay. And keep it open. You can move around. You don't have to stay in the direction you studied, and most people in their career change anyway. Probably 80% of people move out of what they've studied. Okay. So we give them that, and that assists them when they go to university. So we're starting to talk about what I coined as the cradle to the grave concept. This is what we're trying to do with our students now. Now I'm getting into the meaty part of it. So off they go to university. Okay, when they get to university, we don't just leave them and say, okay, there you go, off you go. So we've done that pre-work with them, we've done the brain mapping, we've showed them the best learning style, we've recruited them, we've made sure that their marks are right, and now we sent them off to varsity. We have orientation visits. Now these are done by our mentors, and you'll see when our panelists come up just now, you'll see one of the mentors here, so you're welcome to ask the questions. We go and visit them. At first year, we'll get visited 3 times in a year. And then the rest of the grouping would be visited twice a year. Sort of an April time is more a courtesy call. How's it going? Any problems? What can we solve? Do you have university issues? In other words, is there problems within the university itself, like your lecturer, problems at res or whatever, that kind of thing? And we sort that out. And you can ask all those difficult questions to Charlotte, who could answer them. And then later on in the year, we look more at the academic results. What have you done? How have you done? Why are you not performing? And here's where the mentors come into play, where the mentors would sit with them and ask them these questions and sort of really try and help them. So that's the one thing that we do is with the visits. And then, of course, we give them vacation work in their second year, and in their third year, they come into the workplace. Second year, they obviously don't know that much. They've only just passed first and second year. They might not even completed their second year yet by the time they do their VAC work, their vacation work. So we put them into our engineering academy if they're an electrical and a mechanical student. And what we actually get them to do is to build a pick-and-place machine. So this is a device that has to pick up, it's a mechanical device like a robotic arm that would have to go. It's not a pre-made robotic arm. They've got to manufacture it, pick up and place things. They've got to determine different colors while they do that, put it into the right box, etc., etc. And at the same time, we create the orientation of who works in the world of work. Are you the engineer who knows everything? You're the alpha and the omega? Because I can promise you, if you ask an apprentice what they think of engineers, they think engineers are stupid, all right, and artisan. If you ask a technician, they'll say, wow, they're both stupid. If you ask an engineer, they say, but those guys are useless. How do you get that mindset to change? And that's to put them together and say, well, Mr. Engineer, you're now here for your vacation work. You've got to build that robotic arm. That involves working on a lathe, maybe. That involves manufacturing parts. So there's all the machinery, go and do it. And it's a very short period. They say, no, we can't. So it's one thing to know something and have knowledge, but knowledge is not a skill. Skill you've got to develop, and you develop over time, and it's application of knowledge in context. So very quickly they'll get back to the apprentice and say, but you're a first-year apprentice and you can do that. Yeah, it's easy. And that's where they come together and say, well, okay, I'll do the design. Here's the design. Mr. Apprentice, can you please go and manufacture? And then they manufacture and they start to work together. So it's a great learning experience, great wealth of info they take back. Third year work, VAC work is merely going into the plants and actually working, doing project work in the plants. So what do we do for them in terms of assistance? This cradle to the grave. So the cradle to the grave concept really is, it starts with that very first orientation visit and all the visits that the mentors do. But it goes to what we then call phone a friend. Okay, so we coined that from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Phone a friend concept. What do you want to do? I'm suffering in my subject. I really can't cope. Well, okay, here. All the ArcelorMittal students have a list of all the other ArcelorMittal students at university, first to fourth year. If a first year has a problem, they phone a second year. If a second year has a problem, they phone a third year. So you've got a lifeline. And they're all told about the lifeline, so if you get a call from somebody you don't know, at least you can look on your list and you can say, oh, it's that one, and you can start to help them. Okay, so we expect that of our students to help each other. So that's phone a friend. The next concept is book a CE, book a candidate engineer. They might really be suffering and the phone a friend kind of thing is not working. They're then welcome to phone us and we'll get a candidate engineer. Now that is a person finished their university studies and they're busy with their 2-year internship. And that candidate engineer coming from that same university in that same discipline will try and assist them. Quite often we take our candidate engineers on the visits to the university students because they'll know, that problem you got, is it with that lecturer? You must handle that lecturer this way or you must do this. So it's quite important that takes place. Failing that, we have Engage a Mentor program. So the mentors themselves, who are engineers within the company, can be asked to also assist if required. So we've got a whole lot of steps and a whole lot of fail-safe mechanisms for them to do that. That gets us to a 95% throughput rate. From the average norm between 15 and 1.8 is your university throughput. We work at 95%. And all we've done is we've engaged with our learners at university. We've provided them a support, phone a friend, book a CE, engage a mentor, and that seems to work. Through the vacation work that they do, they know they can phone us. We engage with them as well on social platforms. We're starting to drive that more now, rather than just using standard sort of WhatsApp group and things like that. We're going to different levels on that, where we create an app that they can work through, and they can actually give us more information as to what's wrong, etc. Then after that, they graduate, 95% of them in the 4 years, not the 6.1 year standard, into the workplace. The very first question we get asked when they come into the workplace is, can't I spend another 2 years at Varsity and do my honors or my masters? And the answer is usually no. Come to work and work for 2 years, and then you can do your honors or your masters. We will sponsor it, but then you're going to do a project for Arcelor Mittal, as opposed to just doing a project. So we had at one of the students at the University of KZN, they wanted to do their masters. Now we are Arcelor Mittal, steel manufacturer, and what do you want to do as part of your thesis? Autonomous systems for marine purposes. So you want a boat to drive itself? Yes. No, I don't think so. There's no application. So we're very supportive of our young talent. We provide them with bursaries to study. So they come into the candidate program, very sought after program. It's a 24-month program. Every 6 months they get evaluated. They're under guidance of a coach and a mentor 24/7. Not that they work 24/7, but they've got their coach, they've got their mentor. They'll learn what they need to learn in the workplace. And that's very important. At the same time, we will register them with the Engineering Council of South Africa as an engineering candidate. And then, sort of in their second year of this, we have what we call an engineering symposium. It's a nice big event like this, where they showcase their talents. In other words, what have they done over the last 2 years? What projects have they done? They present their projects. And if any of you are looking at me now, and you say, what are you talking about? Because you may have missed it. It is something we do. We've been a bit low-key over the last number of years on this, but it's a great way to showcase our talent. So they compete against each other. Prizes for the winning project or the best project is an overseas trip. But there's always a caveat to all free lunches. They just need to make that overseas trip to our sister plants overseas. So they can go overseas, sponsored and everything, but it's not a holiday. They're there to learn. So they'll go to one of our overseas plants. They'll have a look at how do the overseas plants do certain things. They spend about 3 weeks there. Obviously, they've got time to sightsee and stuff like that, and they come back and bring back their knowledge. So that's part and parcel of what we do as candidate engineers. And then they're into the world of work, and they become engineers, and they're fully fledged engineers anyway at the candidate phase. They're just under guidance and mentorship. In other words, what we do with them is we don't throw them out to swim without the water wings. We actually give them nice little ducks that they blow up and put on their arms, and it assists them in that world of work. And we really believe in that. I don't really believe in throwing them out there, although that is one way of learning, and I call it learning by osmosis. Now, Rolf is one of our mentors, myself included. We kind of learned by osmosis. It takes you 20 years to learn something, but we can teach that same thing in 1 year now, if it's guided, if it's structured. So we had a previous COO from the group, and he always said to me, no, Terence, no. The operator in a blast furnace, no, you can't fast track it. That's a 15-year, 20 years before you can do that. Yes, if you learn by osmosis, it's true. But you can provide a better way of learning, and that's what we do through this program. So then, the final part of this sort of rollout is the last 3 steps, which is our succession planning. So it's quite important that you have succession planning. Everybody's linked to the next level position. They get guided towards that position. They get developed according to that position. We have a knowledge management process where we capture knowledge. So our institutional knowledge is captured in our own internal Wikipedia. So we have a Wikipedia. It works just like the external Wikipedia that everyone will know. You can go in there, knock in a search term, poof, and you can find information. So it's a great thing for capturing transactional things, Because quite often when you do recruit people into the company, the person that was occupying that job has already left. We don't normally have that luxury of saying, oh, by the way, I'm going to leave and I'll hang around for the next 6 months until you find me a replacement. So we capture everything in the Wikipedia, but we're also using different social tools there. We're busy right now with the development of an app for your phone where you can get bite-sized bits of information. So working through a learner management system, a formalized system is antiquated. It's the old way of doing it, but it's needed for compliance kind of training or stuff where you really need. Today's knowledge seekers, you guys in the room, want to go and suck the information, and I want you to suck the information because then you become a company which is a learning organization. Just-in-time learning, bite sizes, little video clips, 3 or 4 minutes in length. Anyone want to put their hand up and say, what is the ideal length of a video to learn from? Anyone want to take a try at that? 5 minutes? 5 minutes is about 4 minutes and 20 seconds too long. Right, 40 seconds. After that, your brain starts to switch off. Right, so very short little bits of information, what you need. That's our typical process. So we bring the people in from our pipeline at the bottom. We develop them through our processes, through our succession plans. And we have the Y career model where specialists can remain specialists and managers can become managers. Because if you take a great engineer and you want to promote them and you don't have the specialist leg, what do? You make them a manager. You know what you've done? You've taken a great technical specialist out of the field, so you've lost them. You may as well have kicked them out of the company. And you've got a bad manager for 7 years, statistically anyway. It takes you 7 years to become a good manager. Because you know, now you're the Mr. Manager, but you're also the ex-engineer that knows everything. I can't delegate this task because I can do it better myself. And this is one of the big problems that we have. Okay? So try and match people. There are assessments that can be done to determine management propensity. Send the person off into the managerial line if that's what they want. Or wait, they get to 35, 40, they might want to switch across. And then in terms of transferring that knowledge, so you come in on the left-hand side, you through the pipeline, you get trained by a coach and a mentor, that's that first block. You then become experienced, you add your knowledge to our knowledge base. Eventually you become the mentor and you transfer your knowledge. But there's 2 ways of doing that. If you take the top arrow, you coach and mentor that youngster coming in, but you still do your job. The lower arrow says twilight career. Maybe it's time when you get to your twilight of your career at the age of around about 60, where you might have 3 or 5 years left of work, you step out of your job and all you do is coach and mentor. Your transfer of skills is so much better and you'll never be lacking in terms of your skill sets. So go out there, spread the word, attend the rest of the presentations, use the hashtags, use the Rising Star taglines, tweet about us. But what I'm going to now ask is I'm going to ask the panelists who are everybody that's been involved in this program. So we have students at university, we've got ex-students, we've got admin people that work with our processes, we've got the mentors. I want to get them up here to sit on the chairs. So if you don't mind, please coming up so long. The panelists, you know who you are, please come up and sit. And then we'll open the panelists to questions, and then you are most welcome from the floor to ask questions. Don't be shy. I know at first nobody wants to say anything, but please, if you do have questions, please pose them. I will then ask the panelists to, without having to force them to answer, they can kind of volunteer who would like to answer the question. So guys, as the question gets posed, feel free to answer. If you feel it's in your sphere, from whatever level of that pipeline, please just answer. It's a relaxed atmosphere. As you can see, there's only 1 or 2 people out there. You know, they do say that the fear of talking is one of the greatest fears of humankind in front of public. But don't worry about that. Okay. So please, the floor is open to questions. as to our process, what we've done, how we do it, our successes, and how the panelists experience it.
Hi, Terence. Two questions. One, how do you deal with your, you actually told us that you are training about, is it 1,300 or 300 in your circle? And then my question is, do they all have the jobs after when they've actually graduated? And then number two, do you actually have exit program? Like if a learner or a graduate is not that good, do they actually exit at some point?
Okay, I think I must take that one, or yes? Two questions, but it's actually one. Right. So yes, we have between 1,300 and 1,000, 3,000. We've gone up to 3,000 in the past. So they're all in active training programs at different levels, right from your engineer at the top, right down to your operators that actually operate the machinery. They're all in formalized programs. I don't believe in presenting any kind of program that doesn't culminate in a national qualification. So your production learner does the NQF level 2, 3, and 4 qualifications in metal production. That's a learnership. Then your artisans obviously go through the full apprenticeship program. On site, we have our own engineering academy, one of the flagship and benchmarks in South Africa and globally. We are the training benchmark for our group, Arcelor Mittal wide group, where we have 60 different countries represented. And so we train them up to national qualifications, which is an NQF 4 level artisan qualification. Our technicians obviously go through the universities of technology, then come through our learner tech programs, culminating in their diplomas. And our engineers obviously go to university and come back. Now, having said that, if our workforce is only 10,000 and we've got 1,300 people in the pipeline, it sounds a bit crazy. But remember, the pipeline does stretch over a number of years. It's at least over a 6-year period. We do have a natural attrition rate, so there are people leaving the company. And yes, we do train more than we need. So we made a commitment to the then Deputy President of South Africa in the GIPSA time that we would start to train over and above our own need. So although we do look at the workforce plan and what is our need over the period of time, I also look at who are the leavers. So if we look at our workforce plan, we don't have a lot of engineers leaving the company, but there are managers leaving the company, but the engineers become the managers. So you are actually losing people. So we bump up, so we make provision for that. So that's why the pipeline is quite big. At any given time, we have about 100 engineers at varsity studying on a bursary, a full bursary. 101, give or take, at the university itself, and the others are busy with their practicals within the company. So because we train more than we need, we do release people, and the idea was we release then people through the exit program to the South African economy. But we don't just release a person saying, okay, we finished with you, you're gone. All of our programs include a practical portion. So if we just take the candidate artisan as an example, so you've done an apprenticeship, we don't now say, we've trained more than we need, so bye-bye. We say, no, you go into our candidate artisan program. We provide you with a 1-year fixed-term contract. You work in this company, but you're under mentorship and coaching. Now you can leave after a year. They can actually now go out with a CV saying they've worked for Arcelor Mittal for a year. So that's how we align that. So any questions that you have specific to engineer training, the engineering piece of the training, this is the panelist. I'll sort of fend the others if they come my way. Any next question? Yep, front here. Is there a mic? Okay, I think it's there, yeah.
Hi there, my name is Loiso. I don't have a particular question to the panelists, but to you as an organization. Like you mentioned, the workforce plan, which in other organizations doesn't exist, and it becomes a problem. And there's so many initiatives that you as Arcelor Mittal are doing. But have you tried to canvass other organizations to do similar things that you are doing in order for us to close, this gap that currently exists.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing it in isolation and they're also doing something else in isolation, it's going to take us quite some time to get
Yeah.
to where we need to. So are you doing
Yeah.
enough within your space, with your peers and stuff?
Yes, we are, and I think it can be actually expanded. Well, what we are doing through the CETAs, the MERCETA specifically, is all the members of the CETA that sits on the metal chamber. We work together on this, and we've commissioned research in terms of this so that people can start to do these kind of workforce plans. And these are predominantly manufacturing people, and that's what I'm saying is actually surprising that they actually don't do this. They don't prepare for the future. They don't look at what's going to change in their organization. And that's when they run to the market looking for the skills, and then they come back and say, whoa, there's nobody out there. We can't find that people. Those people are a small bunch of people that are just moving around in this market. So yes, we do, but we try and expand that. And there's a program that we also take part in, which is called Ingenious. Now, Ingenious is organized by the Engineering Council of South Africa, and what they try and do is try and sort of align and get collaboration between all the different companies in terms of all the different initiatives that are actually taking part. So, what are you as a company doing? What are you as a company doing in terms of workforce planning, but also predominantly in terms of skilling the nation? So that I always use the analogy of if you have a ball with 4 pieces of rope at different times, and if I pull these 4 pieces of rope, what happens to the ball? The ball's just going to go like this. But if we pull all 4 pieces of rope in one direction, the ball is going to move. So we need to pull South Africa forwards by aligning all our efforts, and that is what Ingenious is doing. Right. I think there's questions over there.
Good morning. I'm Ketia from Teach South Africa. This question is to Charlotte Mtimkul. I wanted to find out, how do you identify the children who attend your science centers? Because as Teach South Africa, we place ambassadors in schools all over South Africa, and some of these ambassadors have engineering degrees to teach maths and science, and hopefully encourage these learners to go into the field of engineering when they finish their matric. So how do you actually identify the schools that you work with? Because we have quite a huge network of schools where we have ambassadors who are improving results in maths and science.
We do it in collaboration with the Department of Education, because obviously we cannot intervene with students without having to work with the Department of Education. So what happens is that the schools, they select their students based on performance. And it just depends on the intake for the year, and then different schools in their areas, the community schools in close to the science centers, and they select students and they send them to the science centers, and they attend the weekly, daily. It's not daily, it's actually once a week, and then the students rotate, they get transported from the science centers to home and to schools. So it's mainly selected from schools. We don't go and select students. The schools select the students. Does it answer your question? Okay. All right, cool.
Okay, we have a question in front. We've got a question at the back there. You can get the mics. Jerome. Okay, we got. Yes. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Poppy Melato from ESCOM. My question is really about, once the students have graduated and now they're expected to deliver in the workplace, how do you manage the gap? Because they get into an environment where people are highly skilled and they're also expected to deliver. I think earlier on you mentioned that sometimes the students get there and then they're like, can I do my master's? It's because maybe they feel the pressure once they get employed. Thank you.
Rolf, do you want to take that one first?
What we normally do is we allocate the Canon engineer into an area, into one of the plants, and over the 2 years they work very closely with a supervisor or a senior engineer, and they get to a point where they actually very good. We'd love to appoint them earlier because they pick up very quickly. But we have a 24-month program that we follow. And what normally happens is that that individual gets taken up by that plant itself because they find that they network with the people and they get involved with the guys and they start taking over duties, and it's just a natural progression for them to actually move into this section themselves. It's very seldom that we have somebody moving somewhere else, but we have a mentor meeting once every two months, and it's this time of the year when when the 24-month CAN engineers start looking for work, and if there's vacancies in other areas and not in the area where they're at, then we will actually approach the CAN engineer and say, these are the options open to you, where would you like to move? And we have a bit of an interview with the guys that they're going to go to. And you'll find that the guys are really, really good. You know, most of the guys of the 24 months, they know what they're doing. You know, they're good. You can ask Alistair. Alistair's one of our CAN engineers. He's approaching his 24-month period now as well. And I think you have a vacancy. You're going to stay where you are now.
I think there's a question at the back there, and then, Ron.
All right. From you, Terence, you mentioned that AMSA sits in different committees of curriculums within the university. So this question will be directed to Danvir as well as Ralph. What is the effect that the curriculum has contributed to AMSA in terms of seeing the progress of engineers, because they are perceived as people who are very antisocial and all those things. So I want to know what is the effect that sitting in the curriculum planning of the university has brought to AMSA.
Did you get that? What's the question? The question is, seeing that we have input into the curriculums at university, how did that impact Arcelor Mittal?
All right. Basically, you go to your standard university degree. So you have your basic courses that you need to execute for the university standard. But with ArcelorMittal, they bring in the practical implications into that as well. So an engineer can be theoretical, but the company requires a more practical theoretical engineer, which is quite difficult. So when Terence and his team do go to and converse with the universities, they allow for that practical application. Second to that is the vocational work that you also undergo. You get exposed to the working world and what an actual engineer needs to do and what they need to achieve. So when you go back to varsity in your third and fourth year, you're able to adapt your theoretical knowledge to your practical implication once you do go through the candidate program. That advantage is tremendous. A lot of the other companies do not offer the same. And when you are thrown into a work environment, you are surprised at what you have to deliver compared to what you have studied. So as an ArcelorMittal candidate engineer going through the process, and as a university student, I can tell you without a doubt that the knowledge you gain at varsity, I clearly do apply it when I did start, and going forward, I am still applying it as well, purely based for the connection. But you can speak to our candidate engineer as well as in the current process, as well as our training engineer at school. Alistair?
I think just to elaborate on what Danvir is saying, yeah, from varsity that change, it is very big, but with the support that you have there, Terence mentioned your mentor, your supervisor, then it's quite, yeah, it's challenging at first, but it's doable. It's doable. So, yeah.
Going forward, I think as well, even when you do go into a working environment, back to the candidate program, it's a soft starter to the working world. Our candidates are more or less ready by the 12 months. They're working with engineers, they're working with managers, cross-pollination, collaboration. It makes you feel that you're already in part of the environment. So at 24 months, most of the engineers are already ready, and our engineers are quite advanced and they're quite skilled compared to most in the industry as well. As Terence mentioned, 95% university rate is very good. Okay.
So we also, in terms of the curriculum, I mean, like with Pretoria University, we have a good relationship because of the metallurgical link. And they're the number one, they're regarded as the number one engineering university in South Africa, but specifically for metallurgy. So, you know, we would not want them to teach history, but to teach engineering. So we keep them honest, and they keep us honest by bringing in the latest technologies and things like that. And at some of the other universities that we serve on, we would, for instance, say, well, you know, this specific item that you, if I can just use an example, we said, you need to bring in harmonics into the curriculums, because if you don't, and if you don't know what harmonics is, don't worry, your power factor corrections and problems that you have, heating and motors and all that kind of stuff happens, and the student won't know about it. So that's how it impacts. We see what we need, we go to the universities, we provide advice to the universities as to what they should change, and then they're very adaptive and agile, they change very quickly. Unfortunately, the college sector, the TVET college sector, doesn't work that way. They work on a national curriculum, and it's usually curriculated through people that don't really have links with industry, and therefore they kind of say, but this is what industry needs, without asking industry. But all your other educational institutions, your universities of technology and traditional universities, they listen to industry and they change curriculum accordingly. Obviously, they don't throw things out just because we say they must. They'll think about it and make sure that it's aligned, because they've got to look at specific minimum level of education. Okay. So we had there, sorry, we've got a question here as well. There's a question there, and there's a mic there. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Terence. My name is Richard Masamola. I'm one of the co-founders of Teach South Africa. And thanks for the presentation you made, because we once presented to Arcelor Mittal on the work we do. Yeah. And latching on what Charlotte just said is, I see we as social activists and the private sector working very much in silos, that we don't harvest and harness the investments we make in skills development. Why I'm saying this is that as Teach South Africa, we invest a lot of capital coming from the private sector, because that's where we find CSI funding to recruit graduates from universities to deal exactly with the issues you raise in building up mathematics, science, English, and IT in schools, so that we produce quality students that can take advantage of the kind of learning we require to build the economy. But where it gets missed is there's no alignment. We'd have loved a situation where the schools we place these graduates in work closely with the science centers linked to Arcelor Mittal, so that the investment we're making and the investment that Arcelor Mittal is making benefits these individuals, so that by the time they get to university, it's not money lost, it's not investment lost. And I think the question that Ketiwe raised was, where do you get these students? And your response, correctly so, is from the Department of Education, because they run the schools. But I'm sure we can have a much more deliberate intent of such programs to work together, that if we place two schools in the area of Sidibeng, which are more closer to probably where the centers are, we have schools in Tshwane North, where probably the centers are. Which schools are those that we can identify? There's an ambassador here, there's an incubation happening in maths and science, and how can we get these learners to take advantage of the centers? Because you might find that sometimes these learners don't even know of the existence of these programs. And along the way, we lose them. We do now track our students that have been taught by the ambassadors getting into university. How are they doing into university? We have not been very successful to look at the placements of them coming out of university, because we don't have these aligned relationships with programs like Arcelor Mittal. I'm sure if we continue to take this conversation further, we should be able to find a synergy or a collaboration where Teach South Africa can see its benefit in the work that it does, without having to lose these people when there are programs that can receive them, like the Arcelor Mittal program. I'm sure we can engage further on that. The second question, you've touched on it, is the TVET programs. We do have a lot of, because our emphasis is correct the maths and the science and the language at grade 8, 9, so that by the time they get to grade 10 and make choices, they have a grounded ability in the maths and the science and they can make choices. But you get those that goes to the TVETs. And what's the attitude of Arcelor of the quality that comes out of the TVETs to come into your artisan programs? Because that's another angle that we can work closely with to ensure that those that do go through, how can we support them that if they find their way into Arcelor, what quality are they bringing? And how can we support that? Because you have a lot of them, then there's a lot of funding that goes into those TVETs, but they're not giving us much of what we really need, as opposed to what directly will go to Arcelor because the numbers are a bit small. I'm sorry to labor on this, but you know, it's an emotive subject.
Yeah, it's passion. That's great. Just a quick answer then, because I think we've got 5 minutes left. Yes, we support the TVET colleges. We've actually done on most, not most, but just about all of the pilots that come out of there, we've accepted into our company, so we definitely work with them. And in terms of your request, yes, I think we can. So let's talk a little later. I'm sure that we can partner. All right. Question over there. So we only have 5 minutes left, so we need to start wrapping up.
Good morning. I just wanted to ask, from what I hear from you guys, the candidate program is quite an extensive program. It's quite advanced, and the engineers that come out of the program are quite highly advanced engineers. I just wanted to ask, how does the company entail on retaining that talent, like keeping the talent within the company, instead of having the advanced engineers now looking for employment and opportunities elsewhere?
You want me to take that? Somebody want to answer? Somebody want to add? Okay. So, yes, the program is intensive, it's good, and you need to engage. So the important thing is to engage with your students while they're with you. We have quite a compelling EVP, which is your employee value proposition. Remember, we've got an international footprint, so we can offer a lot of programs that really engage our engineers. Now, in terms of engineering in the company, we probably offer more engineering-related projects than most other companies in South Africa. And that engages them. Remember, as an engineer, that's what you want to do. You've studied engineering, you want to do projects, you want to get into the design phase, you want to get your hands dirty. So that's on the one side. We have a talent program, we've got a knowledge exchange program with a group. So we can send people out into the group for a period of time, bring them back in again. We've done that with DeFasco in Canada, which is one of our preferred areas to work with. So we try all of those things to try and engage and retain. And we do listen to our students. So we have forums with them, they speak to us, they tell us what bugs them, what they would like to see. We try and do whatever we can. We are an engineering company, so we're not a Google, we're not an Apple. We don't have sleeping booths, but we try and do our best to engage and retain. It's something we try. Okay, we've got a question here. I think that question has been coming for a long time.
Thanks so much. My name's Bianca from ESCOM, and I wanted to hear from the candidate engineer and the engineer bursar. If we could just have a little bit of their experience, because we've been hearing a lot about the managerial side, and it all sounds amazing. Is it really? What is your experience?
Right,
Not trying to put you in a spot here.
Let's start from the bursar side, adversity. Start
Okay.
there.
Well, from a bursar and student, the experience has been fantastic because, especially with the meetings with the mentors every year, they ask you what's going down. If you need any help, they're always there. They'll intercede with the university if you need anything. And the vacation work has been fantastic because I noticed we learned a lot of things during our second year work. And then when we went back, we could apply everything even before we've learned it. When they started talking about, okay, I've learned this and I know what's going on. And so it's really fantastic from this side.
Maybe if I can just add, I used to be a bursar student as well. It is fantastic, but difficult as well. Every time they come, it's a lot of pressure, but it's good pressure. So we constantly reminded that, hey, okay, the big guys are behind you, so you have to work. So it was quite encouraging. The support as well there is absolutely phenomenal. It's very nice. And then moving then on from being a person into the candidate program, like I said before, the support, it's really what matters most. I mean, you get there, you don't know anyone, but at least you've got these two guys that basically hold your hand for the first couple of months. Your supervisor will let you know, okay, focus on this, because you're coming into a plant that you have no idea what goes on or what happens there. So your supervisor will, okay, no, look at that, and then apply some engineering there and see what you can develop. And then your mentor will come in and say, no, but I think your supervisors might be wasting your time. You need to do engineering work seriously. And then, okay, it comes again back to you that what do you want to do as an engineer that's recently graduated? What do you want to do, your line of work? Where do you want to see yourself after 2 years? But again, your mentor's always there to hold your hand in a way. So, good experience, very good.
All right, thank you. I think that comes to an end because is there a question over there? Can we make that the last one? Because I've been told we've only got
Sure.
0 minutes left. Sure.
Just a quick question. I really like what I'm seeing here in terms of the technical training, and I used to work for an engineering business, so in the L&D space as well. I'm now with the University of Stellenbosch, so I've got more of a leadership focus. I just wanted to understand, in that program, is there a focus on identifying young leaders as they come through in the program, in that talent pipeline, and how then do you focus on them? Is there anything that you specifically look at or look for, and do you develop them in parallel? Because obviously with an engineering mindset, you do want to also go into the right brain sometimes.
Yeah. So I'll answer that? Yeah? All right. Yes, we do. And that's sort of that managerial propensity kind of assessment. But we look at the individuals, we look at their aspirations. We have a entrenched, what we call the GDP process. It's our Global Employee Development Program. So once a year, we'll have a discussion, we'll have ratings. It's a performance management process. And through that, we identify the talents. We group them into 3 different grouping of talents, sort of your upcoming, middle level, and then top level of talent. And we ready them for specific levels. So your top level will be readied for the general manager positions, middle level into the senior manager positions, and then obviously your junior level into management. And we have numerous programs locally as well as internationally to drive what we call the talent pipeline, to become first-time managers, managers of managers, managers of divisions. So yeah, that's all entrenched. We have some of them here. We've got some talent in the room from Arcelor Mittal at different levels, even some that have won the Rising Star competition in their groupings, and we've done very well in that aspect. So we definitely drive that quite hard because we do want to develop tomorrow's leaders today. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gents. Please enjoy the rest of the day.